First of all, I want to welcome the fact that we're discussing the situation in Palestine on the day after the International Day of Solidarity with Palestine. And can I commend Dunleary-Rathdown County Council, where they voted to fly the Palestinian flag yesterday in a motion proposed by Councillor Hugh Lewis and Lisa Halpin. And I believe Galway City Council also flew the flag, as Dublin City Council had before. And that speaks to the enormous solidarity that exists in this country historically for the plight of the Palestinian people, and a recognition that the persecution the Palestinian people have suffered, the oppression, the denial of rights, the displacement from their land, the status of exiles for millions of Palestinians, the cruel injustice, the colonialism, the apartheid laws, so similar to the Irish penal laws that were imposed on the Catholic population here, that we understand the plight of Palestine. I think in a way few others can fully empathise, because it mirrors so closely our own history under colonial rule. And you know, I think in that context, and on the day after that International Day of Solidarity, you know, we have to say, and you know, I don't mind admitting that the Irish government is better than most governments, at least in terms of the statements it makes about the mistreatment of the Palestinian people. But the problem is, nothing ever changes. Nothing ever changes. I got involved in politics because of Palestine, because I spent a year living there in 1987, the year of the first Intifada. And I was shocked to my core to see the racism, the endemic racism in the treatment of the Palestinians by the Israelis. I mean, farmers on the farm I worked in, Israeli farmers, used to say things like, regularly, the only good Arab is a dead Arab. That's how bad it was. It was absolutely rampant. And young Palestinians who I worked with, who travelled for hours from refugee camps in Hebron, brought me to their refugee camp. This is as the first Intifada began in 1987, and showed me the caves where their families lived for 2 years after they'd been forced by terror gangs, Israeli terror gangs, out of their homes in 1947-48, the year of the Nakba, where they had to live in caves until the UN came along and built refugee camps. And they and their parents and their grandparents have lived in those refugee camps ever since. And it just goes on, and nothing changes. So we have the designation of 6 peaceful NGOs as terrorists, because the Israelis can just get away with it and nobody does anything about it. We have a nation-state law introduced a while ago which gives only the Jewish people the right to self-determination, which is an international right that people have and that the Palestinians have. We have a siege of Gaza going on for years, where the most inhumane conditions are imposed on men, women and children in defiance of international law. Nothing done. Nothing done. Day in, day out, administrative detention of Palestinians, Palestinian youth, internment without trial, and it goes on, nothing done. We have the Oslo Agreement 25 years ago. From day one, Israel was breaching it, further annexations of Palestinian territory, the little bit of Palestinian territory that was left under that absolutely miserable and humiliating deal, and they couldn't even respect that deal, and they go on ethnic cleansing in Jerusalem, seizing territory, annexing territory, and the world does nothing. They occupied before that the West Bank and Gaza in 1967, and of course the horrible crime of the Nakba itself. Or has anybody ever been to the Palestinian refugee camps in Beirut? They are absolutely shocking. 3 and 4 generations of Palestinians living in the most disgusting, appalling conditions, nothing done. Even though under international law they have the right to return, nothing done. And we continue to entertain the nonsense that the state of Israel that does this is a normal state that we should talk of as if it behaves in any kind of normal way, when it clearly doesn't. Now, I ask the question honestly, Minister, when are we going to do something? When do those crimes, ongoing for decades, for generations, day in, day out, ever getting worse, when do they finally prompt action by the European Union? to even end the favoured trade status that Israel have, to impose some kind of sanctions. Instead, we just get words, no action, and the suffering the Palestinians continue. So I ask, honestly, Minister, is there ever going to be action to stem the tide of injustice, brutality and oppression that the Palestinian people have to suffer?